Well, welcome. I appreciate everybody being here, and always thank you for your time and commitment to this work and the time it takes to be part of these meetings. So thank you for that. If you know Assistant Commissioner Kevin Wright, he's been a great contributor to this board, and he recently retired. So we wish him well, certainly deserves that, and hope he's having a good time not working. That's the best. But in his place today, we're happy to have Amy Howell. She's the Director of Vocational Rehabilitation, so she's serving as the interim after his retirement, and she'll assume the DHS representation to the board and so on. So she has great experience. I got to talk with her a little bit earlier today. So she's worked at the Tennessee level and the federal level advocating for people with disabilities. So she's really done some good work, and we're happy to have her filling in the meantime. And then also got to say hello to our newest board member, Kelly North. Wave, Kelly. All right. Very good. Everybody sees her. And then she is the executive director of the Tullahoma Area Economic Development Corporation. I practiced that so that my tongue wouldn't get tied. And but again, she has done some great work in what we are trying to accomplish as a board, and she is going to be a very, very helpful contributor to what we're doing. Keep in mind that we are on YouTube, and we're broadcasting so people can watch. This is all public record. So the reason we tell you that, first of all, so you know, and second, to hit your microphone button so that if you have a question or a statement or a roll call answer, that everybody can hear you, not just in here, but also out in YouTube land. Okay, with that, I think we're ready for a roll call. So Ms. Eiler, if you would help us with that.
Good morning. As I call your name, please use a microphone to confirm your attendance audibly. If you are a member of a local workforce development board, please state the local board. If you are representing by proxy and your name is not called, please state your name for the record. Jackie Akbari.
Present.
Natalie Alvarez.
Present.
Martha Axford.
Present.
Brandy Lassiter for State Senator Paul Bailey. Commissioner Thomas, proxy for Assistant Commissioner Jay Baker.
Present.
Martha Axford, proxy for Joe Baker.
Present.
Jason Bates.
Present.
Tim Berry.
Present.
Linda Botch.
Present. Southern Middle.
Josh Brown.
Present.
State Representative Clark Boyd. Suzanne Carr for Commissioner Carter.
Present.
Natalie Alvarez, proxy for Billy Dykes.
Present.
Jason Bates, proxy for Ben Ferguson.
Present.
Max Goldberg. Marshall Graves.
Present Southeast.
Linda Botch, proxy for J. Paul Jackson.
Present.
David Jordan.
Present.
Mayor Tim Kelly.
Present.
Policy Director and Governor's Designee Michael Hendricks. Sandra Long. Director Jenny McCabe for Commissioner McWhorter.
Present.
Kelly North.
Present.
Mayor Mike Pogriba.
Present. Northern Middle.
Jason Bates, proxy for Stuart Price.
Present.
Assistant Commissioner Deborah Knoll.
Present.
Lee Sloan.
Present.
Linda Botch, proxy for David Stansel.
Present.
Commissioner Denise Thomas.
Present.
Will Trum. Jeff Vance. Ron Wade.
Present. Greater Memphis.
Vocational Rehabilitation Proxy, Amy Howell.
Present.
As a reminder, for any votes during this meeting, you must recuse yourself if there is a conflict of interest. Chairman Berry, we have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you so much. And based on this meeting and the last meeting, the level of guest speakers that we have, I think, stresses the importance of what this body does for our state and for the residents of Tennessee. And so Commissioner, would you introduce our next presenter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is my absolute pleasure this morning to introduce someone who is not just pivotal to what we do in economic development across this state and, dare I say, this nation, but also to workforce development. He is not only a supporter of this board and of the department, but also has been a catalyst for some of the things that we've been able to accomplish as a workforce development ecosystem. I'm proud to call him someone that is a confidant at times. He is a soothing voice. He is a voice of reason, pragmatic in his approach, but more importantly, he believes strongly in the success of Tennessee and the public workforce system. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce Deputy Governor and Commissioner of Economic and Community Development, Stuart McWhorter.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is this working? Can y'all hear me? Okay, good. Well, thank you for having me here. I've been anticipating this for a while because Commissioner Thomas and I talk about this all the time, about the work that you all are doing and the opportunity to just share a little bit about what's happening in the state and what we're doing from our department in particular. And but before I start, I just want to say thanks to all of you for what you do, because it's so important, the work that's happening here, not just today, but all the work that happens, you know, the phone calls and the meetings and all the side meetings and all the things that lead up to important decisions and discussions that happen at these board meetings. Because I'll say this, I'm sure, later, but, you know, it's something the governor speaks to often, which is the states that have the workers are the states that win. That's pretty simple, but it's not a simple task. It takes a lot of work in order for that to happen. And, you know, thankfully, I would say that there's a lot of things that's been going on in the state for decades, really, to get to this point in time, you know, for all of us. And it's not something that happens overnight, obviously. And I'm just grateful for, you know, the opportunity to be a part of what you all are doing and why this is important to our department. So I'm going to start and just talk a little bit about what we've done from ECD. And again, I think, you know, Commissioner mentioned this dual role that I play as deputy governor. You know, that was fairly recent addition there because Butch Ely, Deputy Governor Ely, retired back late last year, mid the year, and the governor asked if I'd come back, meaning I was sort of part of all of this early on as F&A commissioner. When you're the F&A commissioner, a little secret here for the may not know, but the F&A commissioner actually has an office in the Capitol. It's the only commissioner that has that, and you're sort of, you know, you're somewhat separated from the F&A world, the people that you work with every day, and so it's an odd place to work when you're not really directly involved in your department. But because of that, I was around the governor often early on in 2019 and 20, and then I left. He asked me and urged me to lead our COVID response efforts back in the COVID days, which all of us have totally forgotten about, right? So then I stepped out of state government for about a year and a half, and then later came back into this role. And the deputy governor is sort of an opportunity to get back into sort of his inner circle to work with just things that happen on a very frequent basis, daily, hourly basis. Every day is a surprise. Many of you in this room lead similar roles and capacities where days you just don't know you're going to wake up to, and that's a lot of what that is. What's nice about being Commissioner of Economic Development is we have a pretty steady pace. We kind of know what we're doing, and we wake up every day with the goal and desire to make sure that we're delivering on promises and conversations we're having with industry, both here in the state and abroad. And it's certainly a great honor and opportunity to do what I do. I've got a great team. Jenny's here from our team and representing our department well here on this board, but I've got a fantastic team who understands what we do, and they take everything we do very personally and with pride, and I'm grateful for that. Just real quick, We often like to talk about projects that we've announced across the state, and last year in 2025 was no exception of a good year. Despite economic headwinds, interest rates, just the whole geopolitical forces that were out there that created, I think, a pretty challenging time for a lot of businesses last year, and to a degree still. But also, in light of all of the economic pressures, there was these, discussions around tariffs and what that meant to industry. And there was not a lot of clarity, and still in some cases not. But businesses were just faced with a lot of uncertainty, so they weren't sure, what their future looked like, particularly in the state of Tennessee. And many decisions were being delayed for a variety of reasons, one of which was tariff clarity, and two, when will the economy cool a bit so interest rates become such that it's more cost-effective to do business, whether it's here or anywhere. And so even with those headwinds, 2025 was a strong year for our department. We announced 75 projects, 8,000 net new jobs, and maybe more remarkable in those numbers was close to $12 billion of capital investment across those 75 projects. A number that, if you look at the year we announced Blue Oval City, that's a record year for the state of Tennessee. We finished it strong with one in particular, which was a company called Korea Zinc that's in the critical mining and critical minerals industry, setting up a shop manufacturing facility up in Clarksville, and then one in Smith County in Gordonsville. They're going to reopen a mine there. $6.5 billion project. So that by itself was a record for our department. One that, again, we're seeing more of these large CapEx projects. I spoke this morning to the Tennessee Bankers Association. There's about 500 bankers in the room. So I emphasize the CapEx because, if you're a banker, that's business, should be. And what's even more remarkable in those statistics and all those numbers is that I think it was close to 85%, no, not quite, 70%. 70% of those projects were foreign direct investments. So companies that are in other countries around the globe investing their dollars in our state. Japan is still our largest foreign direct investment country, close to 200 companies in our state. We're only second to California in terms of the number of Japanese businesses in our state. And that's really stems back to several decades ago when Nissan chose to build the plant in Smyrna. And that's when things really started moving with regards to Japanese businesses in our state. Lots of relationships, whether it's, talk about Governor Alexander at the time, who really sort of spearheaded that, all the way to even more recently, Senator Hagerty, who later served as ambassador to Japan. And so there's relationships, deep relationships with the Japanese people and industry and government. But the country that has increased velocity in our state over the last 7 or 8 years is South Korea. And that's been the most active foreign direct investor in our state. And when we track jobs and CapEx, they meaning South Koreans, have led mightily in that regard. But we still have a lot of success in Europe. We spent a lot of time in Europe and talking to companies based in Europe and in the UK. Another statistic that I think is equally important that a lot of people may not realize is that of those projects I announced, 60% of those landed in rural Tennessee, which is a record for us. We've never had that much growth in our rural counties across the state, 60%. 85% of those counties have seen population growth. So now you're talking about counties seeing growth because of the fact that Tennessee is a great place to live and work and raise a family, but also you're companies and industries are recognizing that they can get what they need in rural Tennessee. They have access to workforce. They have access to infrastructure and power. And they know that they can be successful even outside of the core cities and MSAs of some of our larger cities. And so we're very proud of that. When the governor came into office in 2019, his first executive order was to all agencies was to focus on how we collectively can support rural Tennessee. And we've been able to do that. The governor has been, I would say, probably he'll be well known for his commitment to all counties, all 95 counties, particularly those in rural Tennessee. So we've seen some great growth, and I don't see it slowing down, quite frankly. One of the reasons why that's the case, beyond just great people that are in those communities, but it's the alignment we have in the state with our federal delegation all the way down to all 95 county mayors, and including the city mayors. As simple as that would seem to most, it's unique. We talk to CEOs of these companies all the time about what's the difference maker, why Tennessee? Is it no income tax, state income tax? Is it, our tax structure? Is it our regulatory structure? What are the things that bring you here? And they'll tell you that, yeah, all those things are really important. We compared you with other states. But really what it came down for us, what it came down to was the people and the fact that there's alignment and people want to work together and find ways to accommodate industry and growth. When you're talking about new jobs, new high wage jobs, quality jobs. And by the way, last year's of all those projects I mentioned, we were 100% on high quality jobs, which means that all of these announced projects with jobs was above the county median wage on the hourly wage, 100%. And what that means is you're talking about companies that are investing a lot of capital, advanced manufacturing, and it's opportunity for folks who are part of a company to grow and have opportunity to skill up, learn a new skill, get paid a higher wage. And that ultimately is when it boils down to, and the governor's really good about this, is saying, how does that translate to the family that lives behind that mailbox when you drive down rural Tennessee or in any city, and you see the mailbox? What's the story there behind with that family, and how did this job help them? How did it help the next generation? And that's what we're trying to do. But it can't be done without the people. And it's sort of remarkable to me that as simple as that is, I guess other states and other communities just don't do it. They don't either want to work together, they don't like each other. I don't know what it is, but we've got something special here in Tennessee. And I think part of what I would leave as part of my comments is the importance of that partnership, but also the continuity of that. We are now in the last year of the governor's second term, which is hard to believe. I felt like, it feels to me that it was just the other day we were just starting all of this and trying to navigate the first 100 days of his administration, and now we're starting to look at the last 100 days. We're not far from it. So it's really important that the work that's being done, particularly in our department, that we continue the momentum, we continue the work that's been provided in front of us, because again, from my perspective, the things that I'm doing today wouldn't have been possible without those that led before me in this as commissioners. Bobby Roth, Randy Boyd, Bill Haggerty, everybody's handing the baton off, and we need to make sure that that handoff is seamless going forward. I don't know what the next year looks like, and we have a change of administration, but I'm confident that we're going to continue to do the work that we're doing. We've got some great programs in place, and I'll talk about that here in just a minute. But it's really important. The other thing I think that's not widely known, maybe it is, it might be particularly with this group, is that we're going to have a high turnover among just county mayors in this next cycle. There's going to be a lot of new faces at the county level. That's requiring new building of relationships. You know, you get into a routine and you start to get to know folks. You get to know what they like and what they don't like, what's important to them and what's not, because ultimately for us in our department, we're listening from the ground up. We got to know what the locals want. It's not our job to tell anybody what they should do. We need to know what you need. And then we can help facilitate the discussion with industry to bring hopefully what is the best project for their community. But we're going to have to build new relationships in a way. And so that's really important. It's the continuity of those relationships and continuity of strategy. You know, our department's had a lot of great support from our General Assembly. We're very fortunate in that regard. We're not a regulator, which is great. So we typically, when we show up in a community, we're announcing jobs. And myself and Mark Ezell probably have the two best state government jobs because it's always about something fun and jobs. But, you know, we have to have the support of our local partners in order to do it and do it the right way. As I think about this year in 2026 and this last year of Governor Lee's time, and as we think about what economic development means for the state, it's changing. You know, economic development is not what it used to be. And what I mean by that is, you know, evident in our numbers in terms of what I just shared, but we're seeing higher CapEx in projects, fewer net new jobs per project. That's starting to, the line is still rising, but I would say not as rapid as what you would have seen years or decades ago, because it's just companies are investing more in their automation. It's allowing them to make more with fewer people. And that's just the nature of the economy. It's the nature of the new economy that we're in. So we're trying to think about what are ways in which we can be supportive. What are ways in which we still want Tennesseans obviously to have access to a great job, despite the fact that there's these investments being made by companies that may not require as many people. That's okay. They're making more with fewer people as a result of that. But what are the things that we need to do to think about that? So obviously we talk about the capital investment that's being made, but we're also very bullish on research and development. One thing that has become evident to us is that we have companies, global companies making things in our state, and we have research and development assets in our state, and they're not collaborating in the way they ought to be. We want companies that are making things to be spending their R&D dollars in our state to make things better. Whether you're a four-year institution of higher education or whether you're Oak Ridge National Labs or Arnold Air Force Base, there's more. We have some world-class researchers, and we have the ability to really engage. So we are rolling out programming to affect that. We're kind of matchmakers in that regard. We want companies to spend their R&D dollars in our state, much more than they have been. So we're leaning heavy on that. I've created an Office of Innovation over the last year, and we're starting to see some of that come to fruition. And we're very, very excited about that and hope to see more projects where it's not just the collaboration, it's actually R&D jobs that will be created as a result of that. And that's very exciting for us. We think about the supply chain across industry. You know, we have 4 major automotive OEMs here, or soon to be 4 with Ford. But think about, in that case, think about the supply chain. There's 1,000 automotive suppliers in our state, but we have a lot of other industry clusters. So what can we do to continue to bolster that? What can we do to help local businesses benefit from these projects? You know, ones that are already in business that get the benefit of that growth. We advocate in these projects all the time, hire local. If you can't, tell us why. But hire local, they're right there. And that's one of the greatest benefits. We don't measure that from our perspective, but I know it has a massive impact. But we think about, I talk about data centers a lot because that seems to be the front page of everything. You know, we do have some of that in our state, but there's not a lot of jobs associated with that, but the supply chain is. So we need to be thoughtful and we have to be smart about what that supply chain looks like. And we're going to be investing state dollar grant dollars into that. And then lastly, innovation. We're going to continue to be bullish on innovation, whether it's through what I talked about, research and development and collaboration, but also small businesses, entrepreneurs, innovators, I spent 20-plus years in the venture capital industry, and it was around that ecosystem, and one that I'm very, very interested in. I think we've got a lot of upside as a state to continue there. Target sectors. Again, I mentioned this earlier, we have 10, 12, depending on what you're looking at, clusters in our state that you sort of, you think about how you knit all this together across the state. We look across, these 10 or 12 industry clusters, but the ones that seem to be getting a lot of attention is nuclear energy. We've had a number of projects announced over the last couple of years, thanks to the governor's leadership and vision and putting state dollars out there to help us incentivize nuclear energy projects. Thanks to the legislature for giving the support and putting together a nuclear energy advisory council so that we are smart about industry and what the trends are and where this is going. I think we've got not just a unique opportunity in the state, we actually have a generational transformative opportunity in the state. Right now, we have a federal government and a president that understands and values U.S. energy independence. Oak Ridge stands front and center to lead not just the U.S., but literally lead the globe in terms of what can happen in nuclear and new nuclear and other alternative energy solutions, because it's happening. If we're going to be competitive, not just in the state of Tennessee, but in the U.S., we have to be doing these things. And we've got a unique asset, a very unique opportunity. I've heard people calling it the Manhattan Project 2.0. It's that significant. It's concentrated in Oak Ridge, but from our perspective, it's the states that's going to benefit. It's Tennessee that will benefit. It's got to go across all 95 counties. And particularly as it relates to the work that you all do, we have to be thoughtful about workforce in that regard, because it could drown a lot of what we're doing if we can't have the workers skilled and ready and present for that, because it's coming. It's already here. I also want to mention quantum. We're excited about quantum. There are some things in our state that makes Tennessee extremely unique across all 50 states. We are, just like nuclear, I think we've got something very special with quantum. They all connect. There is a connection to it. At some point in time in the future, it's going to make a lot of sense, including AI. So we believe right now is the time. Actually, it probably should have happened years ago, but we have an opportunity, and we're putting state dollars to work. And we hope to get some federal match dollars to build out the infrastructure needed to supercompute and utilize assets that are here in the state. And we have a governor that gets it, thankfully. We have a legislature that gets it, thankfully. And I'm excited about this year and moving forward in that. And that, again, is really important to the handoff to the next administration, make sure that they're going to double down in that regard. I'm confident they will. And then the only other industry that I think is really important to mention is aerospace and defense, for a lot of the same reasons. Our country is looking at our competition, which is China. And when you think about aerospace and defense and bolstering our defense and all of what it requires for that, and onshoring the supply chain, we believe we are in a very unique position to do some things there. We're in conversations now, and a lot of that's driven by the federal government and their desire to move fast. The Korea Zinc deal, by the way, was the federal government working with the company, and it moved. As large as that is, it was one of the fastest projects that we experienced from the day we started the conversation to the time it got announced. A $6.5 billion project, but that was largely driven by the fact that the U.S. government is saying we got to go now. It's aerospace defense, it's nuclear, biotechnology, particularly pharmaceutical manufacturing in the generic drug industry, in generic drug space. China owns that. They subsidize it, they make it cheap. Nobody in the U.S. can make it and compete. And if we get into a mess, our reliance on China for generic antibiotics, it won't be a great outcome for our country. And so these are the kinds of things that now, when I think about how is economic development changing, it's not how we compete with Kentucky or South Carolina or Georgia, which we do, but how do we compete with China? And how can Tennessee lead the way among all 50 states to be that state that steps up and said, we can do it, whether it's in nuclear, quantum, AI, biotech, aerospace and defense. That's what's going to happen, and I think that's what's going to keep us pretty busy over the next couple years and more. Now, none of this is possible without the workforce, right? And I want to brag on Commissioner Thomas because, you know, she and I kind of came into this leadership role about the same time, right? Close. And we were like, why are we not doing stuff together and collaborating more? It's pretty obvious. And we were, and we had been, but it was one of those things where we felt like this is the time where all of the things I just got through talking about, you know, if we can't organize and sort of knock down some of the silos that exist, particularly in state government, we're not going to get anywhere with it. We're looking at other states that we're competing with, and we're actually doing really well. But they have some programs that the industry tells us this. They's like, well, if Tennessee's doing all this, why can't you do what another state may be doing around workforce development and how it's taking all the data and bringing in different agencies and private sector groups together to collaborate on how to deliver a skilled workforce. And we took that upon ourselves with the governor and said, Governor, we need to lock in and get this thing going right now. The cool thing was, one of the good sort of the benefit of going through COVID, the role that I had to play, and I said I had to play, was leading us every day in this rhythm of how do we deal with COVID. And we sort of created this process to deal with very difficult decisions to make, whether it was considered a disaster or in this case, COVID. We took the same discipline to how do we answer questions and deal with the challenges of workforce development and collaboration and knocking down silos. And, you know, she and I just sort of locked arms on this and just said, this is something we're going to need to do, but we need other partners. Thanks to TBR and THAC and so many other agencies that locked in on with that. And we really just sort of, you know, just started almost from scratch and whiteboarded, which is now, you know, becoming this TN Works, which is really exciting. It's something that we get to talk about now with industry. That's what they want to know when they're talking about growth, and they know that in 12 months, 24 months, whatever the period of time is, they're going to need 100, 200 employees or 10 employees, whatever it is. Now we have and will have the ability to really understand what that looks like and make sure that we're listening to industry and delivering exactly what they need. And so I'm really excited about that, and the partnership that we've created as a result and the collaboration, it's now becoming sort of an ongoing cadence for us. And that's what makes this exciting for me, why I know this is going to be successful. But the work that you all do is informing us. It's informing it. It's informing the work that's happening. We need that. Again, you're bringing different perspectives from different industries. You're coming from different communities that have a variety of challenges that might be unique to your community or to your particular industry. We need to know what those are. I'm learning every day with it. I love it. I was just in a meeting before this talking to, do y'all remember those that live in Nashville, been here a while? Remember Kevin Dyson, played for the Titans? So he's starting a new charter school. And you talk about, you know, workforce development and the model that they're using, how they're taking sports, discipline, accountability, and just mashing it all together, because ultimately what they want is a kid to come out of there with the skills and the tools they need to walk into the workforce. And that's what gets me so excited. I love it. And I go back to what I started with, which is, you know, the states with the workers are the states that will win, however you want to define win. I define it with the projects we talked about, but you all have a different definition of what win may be. But but I'm excited about certainly the partnership that we have, the work that you all are doing, and just please know that the work that you all do is appreciated. You're heard, and we need it. And I think even with TN Works and the momentum that it will have makes what you all do even more important and more critical for the future of Tennessee. So thank you for that. Am I doing questions, Commissioner? Yeah, I can, sure. Yes. So I'll take questions if anybody has any, but just thank you for having me. I take Commissioner on our announcements oftentimes because I think it's important for her to just see the excitement we bring collectively, and then I get to point her out and say, you know, y'all are looking for our strategy around workforce development. She's the one. So we're thankful for that.
Questions? I would just say, what other specific action steps can this board do to support the work that you and Commissioner Thomas are doing to, like, how can we best support you through initiatives that we're taking or questions that we ask? What can we do to best support the overall initiatives?
The main thing is just continue clear communication. I think it's just the level of communication is critical. I know that Commissioner Thomas is leading the charge on so much of what the department's doing. So I know that you're being informed from that perspective, but, knowing what other states are doing that we find innovative to what industry is doing that we find innovative. We learn a lot from the industry when we talk to them. We learn a lot from that, our world that we work in from ECD, we deal with a lot of consultants that work with industry, and they too talk to a lot of companies in different states. They're always a really good source of information about what's happening, and we take that as much as we can. But I would just say that anything like that would be helpful in our efforts, collectively in our efforts, and just, again, communication and best practices at this point.
Good. Any other questions? Thank you, Deputy Governor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay, next we have a presentation that's going to be virtual, so we'll get to see the screen. Blair Taylor is the president and CEO of Tennesseans for Quality Early Education, and so she's going to talk about early education pathways. And Blair, I think you can see us, so hopefully, we're not in a lot of great detail here, but it's just this pretty boardroom. And we're all here, and we can see you, and we're ready to listen to what you have to share with us.
Well, terrific. Great. You hear me okay? Yes. You guys hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Terrific. Well, thank you to the board for the opportunity to be here today. I'm Blair Taylor, and I'm the president and CEO of Tennesseans for Quality Early Education. Let me just flip my slide here. Just a quick intro about us. We are, right here. We are a nonpartisan coalition, and we're focused on policies and practices that ensure Tennessee's children get that strong early learning foundation that they need to power our state's future. Our North Star is third grade reading and math proficiency, and our scope is really the whole child support to ensure that child thrives and is successful in achieving by third grade. We research evidence-based solutions, we collaborate with state policymakers, and we work a lot with local communities and our employer and business community to support them to take local action. And I've actually had the privilege of working with Commissioner Thomas and House Education Chairman Mark White on the legislation that I'm here to share today that's going to establish the Early Educator Workforce Development Task Force. And I'll take about 10 minutes to frame the challenge, basically walk through what the bill and the task force will do, and then share why this board's work is central to the solution. A major focus for our work has been childcare and continues to be childcare. And in fact, I actually presented to this board a couple of years ago on our statewide report, The Economics of Tennessee's Childcare, where we talked about childcare being important to the workforce of today and workforce of tomorrow and having significant economic impact in our economy. The couple of stats here, let me just kind of start with where this board lives today, which is in workforce. So our economy is growing in Tennessee, but we have only 56 available workers for every 100 open jobs. Childcare is one of those key constraints on labor force participation, and it really cuts both ways. First, it constrains our broader workforce. So among Tennessee's working parents of young children, you can see there 4 out of 5 or 80% roughly cite childcare disruptions due to work. That was from the report that we did a couple of years ago. Nationally, nearly 4 in 10 mothers, prime-age mothers who are not working for pay, say that childcare responsibilities contributed to that choice. And over on the left there, you see the sort of economic totals, the adverse economic impact on our state. When parents can't afford childcare, they can't work, that means ultimately sort of translate to economic impact of $2.6 billion in losses annually and lost earnings and revenue for parents and businesses and taxpayers across our state. So let's talk about the supply problem. There's a second workforce crisis that's embedded really inside this one, and it's to do with the childcare industry itself and the fact that they can't find enough workers to operate at capacity. And here's sort of the core tension, or what I call the conundrum. Childcare is already unaffordable for many families. I think that's not new to this board. You know that well. Latest data on that cites that childcare costs have actually risen 21% since 2021, and that median infant care now costs about $14,000 a year. You've heard a lot of us, including Governor Bill Lee, cite that childcare now costs more than in-state college tuition, and certainly parents are tapped out. But early educators who are providing that care at a median of about $27,000 a year, that's roughly $13 an hour. So national figures basically, and this is applicable to Tennessee too, 97% of occupations pay more. In Tennessee, 37% of early educator households actually rely on public assistance just to get by. So, like I said, parents, just the central theme here is providers can't pay competitive wages enough to recruit and retain staff because passing off the cost of increased wages would mean passing it off to parents who already cannot afford to pay more. So the result is workforce shortages that are really directly constraining our childcare supply and making it so that the supply is not meeting the demand. We did a little bit of surveying of providers, of childcare providers a couple of years ago, and about 400 of them responded to our survey. And these were some of the results. 70% reported that they had educator shortages in the prior 12 months. 70% were serving fewer children than their license capacity would allow them. So we would technically have slots being reported as licensed slots, but many of those slots are unfilled, not because children weren't there or didn't need to be there or because there weren't waiting lists, but because they couldn't staff the classrooms. So 80% reported wait lists. And there was a report actually back in last year that TASER did that really confirmed all these dynamics statewide. So the question became, how do we build a stronger pipeline into this profession? And this is not today about how are we addressing the compensation rates, but this is about building that pipeline. And we actually have a lot of the pieces. The challenge is really coordination. So this information here on this slide should be very familiar to many of you. The bill that we're talking about and the act and this task force is fundamentally about alignment. It's not about new programs or new spending. It's about what workforce, education, and training resources do we already have in Tennessee, which really are pretty abundant, and actually one important one coming online here soon. And how do we make sure that they're working for this critical occupation? So we have strong assets that should be powering the early educator pipeline: Tennessee Promise, Tennessee Reconnect for Free Community College. We have high school CTE and dual enrollment pathways in early childhood education and teaching as a profession. We also have registered apprenticeship programs. We have WIOA funded training through local workforce boards, as you all well know. And then actually starting July 1, the new Workforce Pell Grant. So for the first time, federal Pell dollars are going to be available for those short-term credential programs as short as 8 weeks. And these are really powerful tools, but right now they're not fully coordinated or clearly mapped for someone who wants to enter or advance in the early educator profession. And I'll just mention another issue briefly when I sort of talk about the challenges. The TECTA program, this issue's really become a little bit more pressing since last fall. There's the TECTA, some of you all may be familiar with that. It's the Tennessee Early Childhood Training Alliance. It was funded through federal grant programs, child care dollars, through our Tennessee Department of Human Services. It had been a primary on-ramp into the profession for decades, providing free training, tuition, support, CDA prep, a career lattice through community colleges statewide. And it was cut recently as part of some reductions in child care spending by our Department of Human Services, which were largely a result of federal reductions. Let me just say here quickly what the task force will do. And I do want to highlight that the bill itself for this task force establishing it is carried, I mentioned, by Chairman Mark White, who's our House Education Chairman, and Senator Dawn White, who is our Senate Education Chairwoman. This creates a temporary task force led by the Commissioner of Labor and Workforce Development, Commissioner Thomas. Thank you. And it will do 4 things, basically. It's going to map the existing state and federal resources that are available to support early educator training and credentialing and career pathways, including all those assets that were just on the prior slide. It's going to assess gaps, including those created by the loss of TECTA. It's going to develop recommendations for how to better align and coordinate and leverage these resources. There are a lot of really interesting and creative strategies for blending and braiding funding that we're seeing bubble up just from our innovative, fabulous Tennesseans. And also building the stackable credential pathways is key here. And I know that's a familiar term to all of you all, that create, though, real on-ramps for people at every stage. And it'll report findings and recommendations to the governor and the General Assembly by the end of this year, 2026, December 31st, 2026. So task force will include Commissioners Labor, Education and Human Services, ECD, the TBR Chancellor, and/or all their designees. The THEC director, importantly, and the executive director of this board will serve in an advisory capacity. Also will include private sector members, community colleges, career and technical education leaders, and practicing and early educator voices. So it's going to cost nothing. It's a resource assessment that positions Tennessee to act with data-driven recommendations. Quick note here on the Workforce Pell. I want to just highlight this as an opportunity in particular for this board to weigh in. As I mentioned, starting July 1, the new federal Workforce Pell will make Pell Grant funding available for short-term credential programs, 150 to basically 600 clock hours, 8 to 15 weeks, short-term credentials. Under the law, our state will play a key role in determining which occupations and programs qualify for the Pell. And this criteria includes whether programs meet hiring needs, employer hiring needs, whether they're on-demand occupations, whether they lead to stackable and portable credentials, and prepare students for in-demand sectors. The early educator profession clearly meets that test. I want you to hear that today. We have documented demand, we have employer need, we have stackable credentials from the CDA to the associate's and bachelor's degrees. And this task force is designed to do exactly the kind of cross-system coordination that will make sure these dots get connected. This is just coming up here on my last couple slides for my closing and my invitation to you all. What we're building here and what we will be building is sort of a better mousetrap, if you will. It's an accessible set of pathways into the early educator profession with multiple on-ramps, stackable credentials, and sustainable funding behind them. A high school student could start, let's say, in a CTE program in early childhood education. They could earn dual enrollment credit They can move into an apprenticeship or a community college with Tennessee Promise or Reconnect. They could use Workforce Pell for a short-term credential, including the CDA in particular, and building towards that sort of associate's or bachelor's degree level with multiple stop-out points along the way as they choose. So this kind of pathway exists in other occupations in Tennessee. And so it really needs to exist and be clearly mapped for the workforce that makes all other workforce participation possible. We like to talk about the child care workforce, the early educator workforce, as the workforce behind the workforce. So last slide here, our ask of you, an invitation of you. First, as you think about WIOA planning and the implementation of the new Workforce Pell and how that intersects with your work, consider early educators as a demand occupation that deserves workforce investment. Local workforce boards across the state can be really powerful partners in directing training dollars to this profession, and your guidance and emphasis there will make a big difference. And then second, once this task force is stood up, which will be pretty quickly after the law is enacted, your executive director and all of you will, your executive director will have an advisory seat, and we actually hope that this board, all of you in the room, will engage actively and help inform the recommendations. There will be opportunity to do that through focus groups and otherwise, because the workforce system is a really central piece of the solution. So thank you for your time today. I hope I did that in my 10 minutes, and I appreciate all of you all, and I'm happy to take any questions as appropriate.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Any questions for Blair? Natalie, go ahead.
Thank you. Blair, can you just help fill an educational gap for me? Understanding that childcare costs are $14,000 and we can't pay competitive wages, can you shed some insight as to where that capital is being absorbed?
Well, you know, the childcare industry is just really, really slim margins. Really slim margins. And so nobody's getting, or very few, nobody's getting rich on childcare. So it's being absorbed in many times and in many cases, you know, on the fact that childcare workers continue to have low wages. So if parents can't afford to pay, right, that's the only way to keep paying or to sort of increase wages for providers is passing the cost along to parents. So those are the only two places where costs can be absorbed or, you know, or decreased. Does that answer your question?
Enough, yes, thank you.
Good. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, Chairman Berry, just a quick question going back to what Natalie was saying is, and I appreciate this task force and what it's going to do and try to develop these pathways, which I think is wonderful, but I still don't see how this solves the problem. And I guess that's my question is, we're going to increase the workforce with people who have the skills and the talent to do it, but yet if the marketplace is still not providing a wage that is incenting people to stay in it, you may get people to start, but are they going to stay in it? We're not solving the problem of we've got all these people that may have these credentials and skills and capabilities, but they're not going to stay in that industry. So is there more work to be done to figure out how do we solve this problem, which is making sure that we have people that will stay in the industry to provide the education resources that parents are looking for? I don't know if that's the right way to state that, but I hope everybody understands what I'm trying to say. So.
Sure.
Thank you for that, and thank you. You're 100% right. This is a sliver of the solution. We have actually at this time a child care solutions package, legislative package, that I was not asked to speak about today, but I'll reference a couple things that are part of that package. There's 4 bills. This is one of 4. One of those bills will address what we call childcare for the childcare workforce. So it's sort of addressing the compensation issue by offsetting cost for the childcare workforce if they choose to and have children and choose to enter this profession or stay in this profession. They would actually get free childcare, which if you're making $27,000, $30,000 a year And you think about if I have an infant and a toddler, that's easily $25,000 a year. So all of a sudden my compensation package is now, $55,000. So that's many states are doing that, and it's a strategy that that I think Tennessee is ready to do, and I expect this bill to pass. So that's one compensation solution. On the flip side of that, on the demand side, with parents, we are also putting in the hands of parents. This bill would make child care tuition support available to more middle-income working families, up to 150% of state median income, so that, so that those parents can at least afford, so they can have some supplement, some assistance to be able to better afford childcare and the cost of childcare. And I don't want to suggest that all of a sudden cost increases are going to start going, costs are going to start going up, but at least gives a little bit of wiggle room in there. And then there are bigger picture, longer term solutions. We're a big fan of the U.S. military childcare model and the funding strategy that is used with that model, which really is our long-term vision, and includes a base layer of funding for operations, and then with tuition layered on, obviously private pay tuition, and then some tuition assistance layer on. So it's a big challenge. It's sort of whack-a-mole. You can't just fix one piece of it and expect it to solve the whole thing. And I think that's your point, Chairman. But I do want to let you know, I'd be glad to come back and talk in more in depth about sort of the full picture of solutions and where we and our advocates hope to go over the next kind of short, medium, and long term in Tennessee.
Very good. Excellent point, Jason. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Thank you, Chairman. Blair, David Jordan, thank you.
Hey, David.
Hey, I appreciate your work, and this is so critical, so important throughout the state, including clearly in Memphis as well. With this request that you have, is there a projection of how many more might be in the pipeline? Is there a numeric, or is there any way to kind of quantify what you're hopeful this might lead to, at least in the number of persons?
David, that's a great point, and I think I would actually hope that this child care task force would do some quantifying of that
Okay.
would be a part of what we'd be able to put together.
Okay.
There's no statewide data on that right
Gotcha.
now.
Okay, all right. Thank you for your leadership.
I do realize I wanted to, since I was talking to the chairman just a moment ago, and Chairman, given what I understand about your role in the industry you've been involved in and your business, I do just want to comment that one of the bills also really engages businesses and the business community to play a role in childcare, not to be the single solution, but to come to the table. One of the bills includes a tri-share model approach, which has been done by a number of states, which would provide a sort of match with the state providing a share, businesses providing a share, and the employee providing a share of the business's investment in that child care. So we're with that, combined with a new federal, what they call 45F, which is a tax credit for businesses it's a significantly expanded federal tax credit for businesses who are investing in employee child care. And so those two things combined, we hope will really, businesses are chomping at the bit right now to sort of figure out solutions and how they can play a role. But sometimes it has been cost prohibitive. And I think that these two things are going to be game changers for getting businesses to the table.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then I would add, making businesses aware that those incentives are available, I think is going to be the next key to that. So.
Well, and if I could just shameless plug, we are launching and have just launched something called the Tennessee Business and Family Forum. And one of our first initiatives is we are producing a report together with chambers of commerce across our state on what's called the Child Care Advantage. We're going to call it that. And we're going to be cataloging and inventorying and speaking with employers across the state to find out who's doing what and how they're doing it. And that will become an on-ramp for our Tennessee Business and Family Forum to then dialogue with businesses, talk about what's available, what resources are available to them. We'll have workshops, webinars, just easily accessible online pieces of information and ways to access how, as businesses and employers, we can engage and make a difference. So we're right on that. In fact, would love to talk with you and this board more about that, but we're very excited and we think the business community is really ready.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time and joining us today and giving good information and great conversation and answering some questions for us.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me be here.
Certainly. Okay, next we need to take care of a little bit of business. Hopefully you had a chance to review the minutes that were part of your board materials. So I am looking for a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting that we had.
So move.
Thank you. I think that was Josh. And then a second.
Second.
Great. Thank you, Martha. And any discussion about that? Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes from the last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that's done. And next, we want to get some updates from our workforce team. So, Commissioner Thomas, why don't you share what's the latest news from your group?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to do it from the podium because we got a lot to talk about, but I'll ask for the board's indulgence. I recognize we got a lot packed into this morning's agenda, so I will try to go as comprehensively but as quickly as I can. This update is a little bit different just because of kind of where we sit, and I hope that all makes sense as we talk about some of this. I want to talk a little bit about the future landscape of what's happening right now in workforce development, and primarily the areas where it's more pertinent for this board at this time. I think we can all coalesce around the vision we have for Tennessee's workforce. We have to do some of the things that have kind of always been on our docket, but do it faster, do it bigger. And some of that starts right now. An industry-aligned workforce is something that you're going to continue to hear us sort of press the gas on, because it's really where we sit right now on this precipice of ensuring that there are high-quality, high-wage jobs for Tennesseans, but doing it in a way that's informed by demand in the business community. As I shared with someone before, this is not just business being a consumer, it's being a partner and really coming alongside us to shape what our next generation workforce looks like. I know in a couple of committees you've heard us talk about America's talent strategy. I'm going to unpack a little bit of that, and then we will move forward. But again, we received that back in August, I think, of 2025 around the talent strategy. And with some of the federal impacts, I'm hoping that this will kind of make a little bit of sense. We had the opportunity to get some insights from newly conformed Assistant Secretary Mack on last week. It was a very good conversation. We always want to make sure in Tennessee that we understand where the administration is going and how Tennessee can play a part in doing that, but in a way that also advances the governor's workforce vision here in our state. So I want to touch on just a couple of federal impacts that are happening and then hopefully land this at a state level. Right now, WIOA is not something where there is an appetite for reauthorization. There are bigger things to get done right now, so reauthorization is not on the docket. The goal right now is to modernize it and integrate it as much as possible. What does that mean? You've probably heard about Department of Education and what's happening at the federal level there. The goal is this continued integration between DOL and Department of Education. Deb, I'm sure, could speak to this as well. So as we were told on the call, the dismantling of the federal education department is not a myth. It's happening in real time. And some of that is moving over to the Department of Labor. As you remember or recall, there was an MOU that was done between the two agencies that has been fairly ambiguous. I think now we're going to start to see an advancement in earnest about what that really means. Part of this for time and space for us is, as we're working on our state modification, Brianna shared that in a couple of committees, is typically the Department of Education has owned the portal where the WIOA plans have been housed. Now we're seeing that come over to labor, and there's a single coordination strategy for coordinating workforce development. So now there's an ownership of that portal that has kind of made its way over to DOL. That's important because that means all of the plans will now be housed in this one location They will be learning from those plans, and we're certain that will influence some policies moving forward. America's talent strategy that I'll get into is now becoming the nationwide framework by which states will use, sort of as the foundation to build workforce strategy. An emphasis on that will continue to be apprenticeship, on scaling, diversifying, and dare I say, accelerating programs. So now not only will we have to move and get wider and deeper, we're going to have to go faster. Sectoral partnerships are also something that are continuing to take preeminence. It's moving employers, industries, providers, and community organizations together. This is a very, the intent is a very coordinated and well-communicated system for all the stakeholders that are mentioned. We all have heard about AI and digital skills. There is a heavy emphasis on how we prep our workforce for AI and digital skills, not only just training workers for these emerging industries with AI, but also ensuring there's widespread literacy and accessibility in getting AI in the hands of all, young, old, and in between. And then you've heard a lot already about short-term Pell and the role it will play in training workforce, both for the country, but primarily here in Tennessee. So the 5 pillars of the talent strategy are listed there. I'll hit each of these really quickly to give respect to our agenda, but I think it'll make sense when we start talking about how we'll galvanize some of the work over the course of the next year, and ultimately this will bleed over into the new incoming administration. So industry-driven strategies are aligning workforce programs with high-growth industries. It doesn't mean that there may not be industries that are not taken into consideration, but the goal is to make sure that our resources, our attention, and our work is really put behind industries that are showing high growth. This means bringing along those employer consortiums alongside what we're looking to do in credential attainment. It's also making sure that labor data is available in real time, not just to the practitioners such as departments, but also to industry that needs to use that to determine how they can best scale their workforce and what training will be needed for them as well. This is also activating sector strategies. This is a term that's been thrown around quite a bit, sectoral partnerships, sector strategy. The goal here is not to just have this as a buzzword, but to activate those sectoral strategies by getting meaningful understanding of which training programs do we invest in, how do we strengthen agency coordination, and how do we co-design with employers. As opposed to us creating it and bringing it back to the employer as a solution, this is co-creation at its finest. 2 is worker mobility and participation. This body has heard a lot about labor force participation. We've seen that needle go in the right direction finally in Tennessee. We're over 60+%. The goal is to keep thriving, keep pushing. But as you heard from Blair earlier, transportation, childcare, digital access, all remain things that can threaten and slow down the advancement that we need for worker mobility. Portability, we've heard a lot about. This is not just being able to take these skills to another industry sector, but also taking them throughout a labor market. So if you were to move from one community to the next, is there a viability for you and your family to get there? And also strengthening K-12 to post-secondary career pathways. Our state has done really, really good work in this space, and I'm sure they can tell you a lot more about it. But the goal is that it's still not widely known, the work that's being done. So we got to get the message out more to help people understand from K-12 through post-secondary, really all the way to retirement, there is a pathway for you, and you can pick your pathway and be viable. So how do we make this work more present, more transparent, more readily available for individuals that are looking to take charge of their own pathway? Integrated workforce systems. This is a big one. We all have heard about co-enrollment. We all know about the multiple systems that sit under WIOA. The goal is not for them to just sit there. The goal is for them to actually show in an evidence-based approach that there are actually outcomes. One of the things that we are looking at the department is how do we create regional innovation hubs? What does that mean in practice? Our American Job Centers, I know Jeremy spoke to operations this morning about this, a little bit about this, but what does this mean? You heard Deputy Governor talk about TN Works. Our Governor Hart launched that in November. What does it look like in practicality? all of the things that we've talked about in the talent strategy, all the things that we hope to do as a workforce system, bringing those to bear in a physical representation of having meaningful services available and ready for business and industry and Tennesseans. So part of what you will see is us coming back to this board saying, how do we make sure that we can divest from some of our physical infrastructure and reinvest those dollars into actual participant and industry training? We are seeing our dollars become flat or declining, rising costs of infrastructure. People walking into doors is not the common thread anymore. People want to be served how they need to be served, where they choose to be served. So how do we reinvest some of those dollars into a brand that carries the Tennessee Works brand, but embodies everything that we hope to do as a system? I'll give you an example. That looks like an American Job Center that is shared by multiple local areas. As I stand here today, and our data proves this out, we don't need 100 centers. Some of them have few people walking in the doors, some of them have many people walking in the doors. We can do it better and more efficiently. Employers don't follow local area designation and county boundaries. We have regional employers in Tennessee that serve a variety of counties, variety of local areas. So we think there's some retrofitting that can be done in our system. Creating opportunity, reducing duplication. That will be a heavy focus of our modernization plan, our mod that we're working on right now. It will be a heavy emphasis, on our practice. And we'll be coming back to this board with meaningful, pragmatic solutions on what that looks like. Accountability and outcomes. This board from day one has said, we get the federal metrics, but we want state level KPIs so we can better gauge if the system is performing. We want to double down on that work. We want to be able to track employer satisfaction, track how employers feel about the system. Is it moving? Is it helping you mitigate skill gaps? Is it getting you the workforce that you need? We want to shift to performance-based outcomes. So if we're not putting our money behind anything that doesn't work. So we want to shift in how our resource allocation should move. We want to align metrics with federal and what we're seeing with the National Governors Association frameworks. As you know, we're heavily invested with National Governors Association and some of the things that they've been asking and seeking from governors across the country. And we'll continue to make sure we apprise you of that work as it continues. Flexibility and innovation. How do we utilize waivers? How do we say these are things that are in our way under WIOA that we need to move in order to hit the gas on some things we want to do here? We're actually working on a deck of waivers. Jonathan has been leading that work, and we'll be coming back to the board with those waivers. There will be many. I will warn you in advance, there'll be many, because we feel like there are some things in order for us to completely be innovative, we're going to be asking for the federal partners' consideration of being able to do things a little bit differently here. Tennessee has launched a lot and done a lot in AI work groups and workforce readiness. We want to bring this to scale by piloting some AI upskilling programs and developing micro-credentials in tech fields. We're already starting to do some of this. Brooks has been leading some of that work already, but we want to be able to support employer investment in digital skill training. Not tomorrow, not next year, but right now. And so we'll be coming back to you with what we believe would be some early investments we can make so that this board can evaluate it, study it, and then scale it. Deputy Governor talked about rural opportunity, how we include equity from all individuals across our counties, micro-urban areas even. That's not listed here, but how do we strengthen regional workforce collaboration so we're not doing these things in silos? We have to get to cross-cutting priorities. We don't have the option right now with doing things one at a time. We got to do a little bit of it all at once. And so we're going to be really leaning on regionalism in this next phase of our work. We believe this will help us make advancements in all areas that we've talked about today, including economic competitiveness. You know, when economic and community development are vetting, and Jenny can attest to this, they may look at one area in our state, they may look at multiple areas in our state. We don't need to showcase one and hide the other. We want all of our regions to be viable. So that means that some of this has applicability across the state, and that's what we're going to be looking for, and this board will play a pivotal role in that. This is our impact statement, is building a stronger workforce for every single Tennessean. That's our goal. That's what we're hoping to do. You may say, well, Commissioner, we get it, but what does that mean in earnest? It means that for us, we are completely looking to shift our delivery structure. how it's measured, how it's modeled, how it's branded. We've been in a couple of key conversations that I'll share with you and then pause in case there are any quick questions. One is our budget this year is about, I think we have roughly about an $18 million ask of the General Assembly in state investments to complement our federal dollars, to be able to do innovative, nimble, agile solutions that sometimes our federal investments don't allow us to make. I want to be very clear about that. And I want to thank Martha, State Workforce Board Member Martha Axford, because she was in the audience championing us as we did our House budget presentation. We appreciate that. And certainly, Martha, I think the point you made was valid. We need to start making our State Workforce Board aware when we're doing our budget presentations, because sometimes you can be a champion for us in a lot of different ways. But part of that is to continue to build out our suite of state investments. So we're not finding ourselves asking the federal administration, can we do it? We can simply get it done. And so building out these pathways and working in very close coordination with our partners will take some very real-time, some very bold and aggressive steps that I believe this board is ready to support us in. The second thing, I want to unpack something that Deputy Governor said that I want to make you aware of. We've been asked to come to the table in earnest around the defense industrialization and reindustrialization workforce. As a matter of fact, Tennessee has been asked to lead a region in doing this work. This is more than just about helping Tennesseans find high-quality, high-wage jobs. It's also the national security of our country. So when we talk about nuclear and mineral extraction, aerospace, and all the things Deputy Governor talked about, it will require a workforce. So when we're talking about building submarines, when we're talking about partnerships with Department of War, we've been asked to come to the table in a nationwide effort to do that. They believe Tennessee can play a pivotal part and really be a model for the rest of the country because of our strong collaboration and partnerships and innovation. I kind of co-sign on what they say. This board will be pivotal in helping us develop what that looks like in earnest. Those conversations are happening. They're happening fast. They are aggressive. But what I love about them is they come with funding, because sometimes people want us to change the world for a penny, and we simply cannot do it. This comes with investment that we will be looking to see how it dovetails into our existing strategy, and we're hoping to get that done quickly. So I just kind of want to make that, it was with great intentionality that Deputy Governor was here, because I knew he would leave the breadcrumbs. More to come on that. So I just want to make sure that this was very quick, but this is a pivotal time for Tennessee. This is the point when we take a very hard right around a workforce strategy that looks different. What we've been doing has been okay, but it has not been great. And we need to do it differently. So we're going to be looking at our entire structure, and where it's working, we'll scale. Where it's not working, with this board's support, we will divest and we will reinvest. So I ask for your patience, your support as we move forward, and we can talk more in practicality. And then lastly, I believe we have another slide. Thank you, Chris. Bringing all this to bear, May 12th through 13th, we're going to be hosting a WorkSource Summit where we are bringing together the best and the brightest of our workforce ecosystem along with national representation to talk about this work. So we will feature, this will not be sort of a labor trade show. We will feature the great work that's being done by our partners in education, Deb and others who are leading that work. We'll feature the things that are happening in education, things that are happening in post-secondary, but more importantly, we want industry to be the highlight so that these are conversations about how we bring great minds, great work, great practices to rest. And so we invite you to save the date. We'll be getting an official save the date out, but this will be a precursor what we believe will be great energy as we move toward our ECD Governors Conference later in the year. So please mark your calendars. We will send out a specific invite to you. Josh, we want to work very closely with you to make sure Tennessee businesses are not just, we don't want them just as guests, we want them featured so that we can learn and create models of success. So thank you very much for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman. I know that was much more than 10 minutes, but we got a lot to say. It's a lot happening. So thank you for allowing me to do that. And if there are any quick questions, because I know we got to get back on track, I'm happy to answer that if the board has any immediate questions of me.
Questions for Commissioner Thomas? I'm glad you took the time because that is some great stuff, great material, great points to make, and a great challenge for our team. So thank you.
And I'll get this presentation out. Amy will get this out to the board for reference point. Thank you, board.
Love it. Okay, next, we're going to be talking about worker mobility and the labor market intermediaries. John Scheffner.
Good morning,
Morning.
and thank you for the invitation, Commissioner Thomas, and thank you very much for all your help, Director Mayberry. So my name is John Scheffner. I'm at the University of Tennessee. I'm a professor there. I'm also the director of the Community University Research Collaboration Initiative, which is quirky, and we bring community organizers together with faculty to help resolve problems of the community as defined by the community. But I'm here today as the principal investigator for a project called East Tennessee Works, which is funded by Jobs for the Future, creating a labor market intermediary. Labor market intermediary is a model used across Europe, across the United States, and basically it achieves many of the coordinations and collaborations that people have already talked about today. And what we connect is employers, workers, training providers, community-based organizations, government and economic development leaders. I keep on trying to figure out which screen to look at, together to address the needs of industry and community. We're trying to align workforce supply and demand by understanding who's out there that can be recruited, who's out there that can be trained, what are the barriers. We had a long presentation on childcare. I won't need to say much more about that, but there are certainly others, barriers to those better jobs, expanding information flow across sectors that often do not talk to each other, and delivering wraparound supports for those workers and potential workers. Sorry, I'm too used to walking around a classroom. Wraparound supports for workers who need the support to get to that next level of job. So specifically, East Tennessee Works follows this model. We've created an urban and rural labor market intermediary partnership. We are active in 2 rural counties, Campbell County and Anderson County, and one mostly urban county, Knox County. And we are working with educators, community colleges and TCATs, service providers, labor, community, and industry. And again, we're looking to increase communication, reduce barriers to good work through training and services, making sure that industry's needs are met. We are a recipient of the Jobs for the Future Quality Green Jobs Regional Challenge Program. That's a 2-year, 10-month program funded at $750,000. We are poised to expand. We'll get to that at the end. So how do you build a labor market intermediary? Well, step 1, it says here, is convene the right partners. But actually, we have to take a step further back, and that is finding out who the right partners are, locale by locale by locale. So we were able to do that because of our proximity to Knox County, Campbell County, and Anderson County, bringing industry together, bringing community-based organizations together, bringing labor and public agencies together. Together then, in that partnership, we look at what are the gaps, right? What are the worker barriers? We've talked about childcare. There's also transportation. There's also elder care. That is lack of elder care. There's also the challenges of being in a survival job, which keep you from training and stepping out of that job to get ready for the next one. There's the training capacity gaps. What needs to happen for greater training of a workforce? There's also the employer's needs, right? There's also the fact that that information does not always flow through. Once we've diagnosed those gaps in the areas that we're working, we are now funding them. We are helping TCAT Jacksboro, for example, expand its training, expand the amount of students it can address. We're working with others to provide transportation, to provide certifications, to provide pre-apprenticeship programs. The thing that I think is important to recognize here is there are a variety of really useful projects that are going on, useful systems. We are not at the University of Tennessee trying to come in and reinvent them. We are trying to reinforce those and provide greater capacity. But what we can do, which I think Commissioner Thomas just talked about, is increase the cross-sector collaboration and communication. That's a crucial piece. So who are we working with exactly? Just to put a little meat on the bone. It's always important to find those local partners who represent different communities, different sectors. So for example, we are working with Connect Ministries, an East Knoxville Black women-led and religiously based, community-based organization that is working with the Knoxville Oak Ridge Central Labor Council to create pre-apprenticeship, well, not to create, it's in place, we've created it, a pre-apprenticeship program which provides that next step for those who can take that step into an apprenticeship program. We're working with socially equal, energy efficient development. I always get hung up on that one. SEED, which has a long history of working in a couple of different projects focused on making local youth ready for work through a career readiness project, through a construction boot camp. It's a good moment for me to interrupt myself and say our focus right now is in advanced manufacturing and construction. So SEED is being funded to expand their capacity. We're funding TCAT Jacksboro and Pellissippi State with a variety of the classes that they are able to address employers' needs and community needs, workers' needs. And we're working with Telos Global, which is a Campbell County auto parts manufacturing industry, which has both its own training capacity, but is also taking some of the folks that we are training. We're putting people who are not often in the same room together, our partners with chambers of commerce, with leadership groups, with Rotary, with community college advisory groups. And in this way, we are concretely connecting workers with the services they need, these wraparound services and training, and jobs. Stepping back about 3 slides, we also did research, right? And so part of what we have done as part of this JFF grant, but also preparing for 3 other federal grants that are currently in proposal stage that are being reviewed. We did community conversations across the state of Tennessee, in Knoxville, in Vonore, in Memphis, and in Nashville, as well as in Huntsville, Alabama for the Bridges proposal, which I'll talk about in a moment, as well as an additional half-dozen meetings with sector-specific groups in the Knoxville area. We know now that employers have very specific skills that they need to find workers to fill. But those workers have to be ready in ways beyond that training. Has to be an orientation, there has to be certainly those hard skills, also have to be those soft skills. We've talked about early high school to college alignment already in this meeting. In addition, the applicants have to be prepared for screening, whether that is drug tests, whether that is involvement in the justice system. Those are things we have to address. What are the worker barriers? Already talked about transportation, already talked about child care and elder care. There are also related challenges to being subjected to a legacy of poverty, which also need to be addressed in some of these soft skill programs. We know there are specific needs of certain sectors of potential workers. Youth who have grown up in foster care often transition into that moment that they're looking for work without a support system, without that foster care support system or others. We also know that the community-based organizations who are the trusted messengers, community by community, they're the folks who are talking to potential workers. They're the folks who are providing services. They need to be represented more in leadership roles in the kind of partnerships that Commissioner Thomas is talking about, and that is present in our partnership. Nobody needs to be told that we need greater vocational pathways in high school. In high schools, we need trusted local champions, whether they're coming out of the community colleges, the community-based organizations, the high schools, industry, local government, and we need early coordination between education and industry. We're about 14 months into a 34-month project. And so far, we have enrolled 148 individuals. We've graduated 89 folks. Others are still in training. And 50 have been placed in full-time jobs with benefits. More have been upskilled in ways that they will be able to take better jobs as they come about. As we have done this, we have also impacted the local system, expanding community-based organizations' capacity to provide training, to provide wraparound services. We've increased the investments in our local community college and TCAT. We're integrated into major federal funding proposals. I'll talk about that in just a second. We have demonstrated that we are able to move individuals into quality employment and into training. The LMIs, the labor market intermediary, as a model, its beauty is its flexibility, right? It can be, it says, but in fact, it must be built on local needs, local resources, local capacity, building those through external funds and commitment. The partners to each locale's labor market intermediary depends on who's present and who's ready to work together and how they can be brought together. Industry of the, whatever industry is dominant or ready to grow, community-based organizations, government officials and programs, higher education, and other service providers. So it is flexible and locally adaptable. It is industry rooted, it is industry informed, it is community informed, it is community rooted, it is community responsive, it is community sensitive. Again, we're bringing people together that don't often talk together, and we are capable of replicating this model in other locales. Right now, we are integrated into a proposal called the NSF Bridges Innovation Engine. The site visit for the NSF is next week. I'll be down there talking at much less length. That is meant to build the bioeconomy in northern Alabama and eastern Tennessee. We're integrated into 2 USDA proposals, which should be reviewed in April, and we should hear about that in June or July. And those, again, are focused on the bioeconomy. How do products that are grown get turned into manufactured materials? We're also moving into the nuclear industry that we've heard about in East Tennessee. Right now, there are over 2,000 anticipated jobs to come, and that's focusing on the skilled trades. And this is a number that does not include TVA's estimate that they will need for their power generation. We're engaging with others at the University of Tennessee, at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, certainly at Oak Ridge affiliated universities, another entity that's central there. We're talking with TVA next week, and we will then be turning to talk to some of these industry leaders you see here. Again, it's the same basic idea. What will this industry sector need? When will they need it? How can we recruit folks? What is the training that they will need? How can we activate the community colleges and community-based organizations in high schools that will provide the training? How can we support workers with wraparound supports as they train for these new jobs? How can we channel the federal and industry monies that are coming in to support this? And so I learned from one of our previous presentations that this probably should have been labeled ask, but instead it's labeled opportunity. And so the question really is, how can we work together? I'm really excited about this pending federal support through these grants, but they are proposals at this point. They have not been granted. I'm really excited to continue to work with the Jobs for the Future project, but it has an end date, right? We're about, I guess, 20 months out. We can work together with you all. We can replicate this LMI framework in the regions that are defined by this board as a priority. We can help align state workforce strategy with the industry needs and expansion. We can help leverage new federal and private investment. And I think the goals are exactly the same. We want to build a responsive, it says industry-driven, but also community-driven, community-sensitive workforce ecosystem for Tennessee and Tennesseans. The first thing I meant to do when I got up here was push my timer. I forgot to do it. I have no idea how much time I have left, but I'm delighted to answer any questions if I can. I also have a boatload of business cards I can leave with you, and we can talk another time. Other questions?
John, thank you. Real quick, what's the, for the 89 graduates and the 50 folks that have been placed into full-time jobs, what's the annual budget of this? Like, what does it take for this initiative to produce those graduates and those jobs?
So, I mean, the answer is right now we don't have enough. But what we have, but right now we are funded on a 34-month grant and at $750,000, so less than $250,000 a year. This is our first jump, right? This is, you know, I mean, it took us a couple months to get going, so basically we've spent $250,000 on this outcome in a year.
But obviously, if you're looking to scale that, the economy of scale would be that you could produce that many more graduates and that many more people placed in jobs.
I would want to be careful about exactly using that same sum. In large part because a lot of the work we've done in Knoxville is based on, and Campbell County and Anderson County, are based on connections that we have had and made over many years, right? So that research piece is important. Some of the research, you know, was already in place, and the connections need to be made, right? And each place is going to be different in terms of what the capacity is. So there's going to be a Connect-like organization. There's going to be a Seed-like organization. There's going to be various central labor councils available. But it's hard for me to say, you give me $250,000 in place X, I can do the same thing.
Yeah, but you see where I'm headed with that, because what this board likes to know is what's the return on our investment, right? So if you're asking for funding and we're gonna give you that, what should we expect to get for the money? And so it just helps to at least even understand we're not holding you to that, but at least gives us an estimate or an idea in our mind what a rough benchmark should be.
Yeah, and I think that different places are going to be easier and harder, right? Rural communities, for a variety of reasons, are going to be harder to hit some of those numbers with that same kind of investment. But yeah, for $250,000, I think there's a pretty good outcome, right?
Good. Other questions for John? Okay.
I'll stick around if you want a business card afterward.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right, we are running a little behind, but rather than push that even later, I'll respect your time, we're going to push through. So hang on. Here we go. Next presentation is from Alexander Rutter and Jacob Walker. If you remember, we've had some talks in the past about the benefits cliff, and so this will give us some updates and more insights on that topic.
Thank you, Chairman Barry. Thank you for the board for this invitation. And as the last speaker, I just, out of respect for the time, is 20 minutes still available?
Do what you need to share.
Wonderful, everyone. Thank you. Again, it's great to be here to be able to talk about your strategic priority related to the benefits cliff. Again, my name is Alex Reuter. Honored to be here from the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. Before I get into the details, allow me to offer a disclaimer that these views are my own and do not necessarily reflect the Atlanta Fed or the Federal Reserve System. So let's, I'm going to be as concise as possible. Let's just briefly remember where this board has been on the benefits cliff journey. I know previous presentations to this board answered questions for you all, like what is a benefits cliff? We talked about the cliff tools. There's, of course, an exciting pilot going on with those tools right now. And there was some initial maybe conversation about state and local strategies to address the benefits cliff. Right, so I'm not going to cover all that today, but out of one of your earlier meetings, there was a key question that came up, and that is, are benefits cliffs a significant barrier for Tennessee families? In other words, can you quantify for us what's the nature of this problem in Tennessee, right? So my singular goal for you all today is to try to give you some numbers about the magnitude of the benefits cliff in Tennessee. By the way, just to set expectations correctly, there's kind of two separate questions you may be wondering. One is, if a worker is facing a benefits cliff, what do they do, right? But that's not the question we're answering today. What we're answering is, how many workers are facing the benefits cliff, right? And that's what our analysis is going to do. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to offer a measure that I'm going to call an effective marginal tax rate for low and moderate income workers, the EMTR. Now, please don't get overwhelmed by that term. I'm told frequently I should never use it, but we're going to stick with it because no matter what we call it, we still have to understand what the underlying numbers are, all right? Okay. Now, these EMTRs are available at the national level. These are two reports just for your reference. Congressional Budget Office publishes these tax rates for workers on public assistance every few years. Department of Health and Human Services does it every few years, right? These effective tax rates for workers on public assistance, right? Now, what we're here to do today is give you that Tennessee level estimate. And in fact, we've never done this before. This is the first time we're able to produce these state level estimates, and we're showing it right here for the first time. Right, so we don't have to rely on the national numbers anymore. We're going to see the Tennessee specific data. All right. So I'm going to actually explain to you in brief what is this EMTR concept, and I think it's going to be very intuitive. And why is it important, first of all? Well, we know right from the the Congressional Budget Office, when deciding how much to work, people consider not only the higher earnings from working more hours, but also the resulting difference in after-tax income. Right? If I want to work more, it's not just what the salary is on the job posting, it's what's my take-home pay going to be. Right? Number two, benefits cliffs can reduce the ROI to a worker's career advancement decision. Right? If I'm choosing my training program, nurse, truck driver, IT, I can't base my ROI calculation just on the salary. I need to look at my after-tax income and say 2, 5, 10 years down the road, this is how much better off I'll be, accounting for the public assistance I may lose along the way. Why do they matter? We have some brand new, not from the Atlanta Fed, but some national level survey data talking about how workers respond to these benefits cliffs. Right? Again, this is just to emphasize for you why these EMTRs may matter. So this is a group that did a survey, national survey of low and moderate income workers on public assistance, and they asked them, have you turned down some forms of opportunity because you're afraid of losing public assistance? Right? Let me just point out that top bar there, about 21.8% of workers said, yes, I've had some benefits cliff experience. Number one reason, or the number one action they took, is they did not take, 11% did not take any additional hours worked because they were afraid of losing public assistance. 9% kept savings below a certain limit. And 8.4% didn't take a raise or promotion. They turned down an opportunity for advancement because of a fear of losing public assistance. There's some other data here, happy to talk through later, but I just want to emphasize EMTRs matter. Okay? So what are these EMTRs? And you have to excuse me, the formatting didn't transfer over to this screen. EMTR, percentage of an additional dollar of earnings that is unavailable to an individual because it is paid in taxes or offset by reduced benefits from government programs. Let me offer you just a quick example of what I mean here. Let's say we give a worker $2,000 of new earnings, a $2,000 raise. Let's say they lose $500 in taxes, and then they lose $500 in food assistance or in cash assistance. Well, how much is left from the $2,000? $1,000, right? So in fact, the worker is only keeping $1,000 of the original $2,000. That's a 50% tax on that $2,000 gain, right? So that EMTR is 50%. So again, we're talking about offering a worker $1,000 and they only keep 500 of it. If we add in hypothetically something like childcare, we give the worker the same $2,000 earnings, we take away the 500 in taxes, but now say they lose $1,000 in public assistance. Well, that worker loses $1,500 of the $2,000. That's a 75% tax rate on that $2,000. So imagine you offer a worker a $2,000 raise, they're walking home with 500 of it because of losses in public assistance. We're going to try to measure this number for everyone in Tennessee that's in our data, this effective tax rate. Okay. How do we do that? Just in brief, we use something called the American Community Survey. It's from the Census Bureau. And I want everyone to imagine a giant spreadsheet in Excel. We have about 345,000 Tennessee families in that spreadsheet, every row. Okay? Now, in the columns, we know how much you earn, we know what your job is, we know what public assistance you're on. What we're going to do here is take everyone in Tennessee and give them a hypothetical $2,000 raise. And we're going to recalculate their public assistance and see how much they lose. We're going to do that for $2,000, $5,000, and $10,000, right? So again, that's our spreadsheet. We're just going to hypothetically boost their income and see what their change is on public assistance. And that's how I'm going to give you this EMTR. Concrete example, everyone. This is a benefits cliff chart for an actual Tennessee family from the survey, from the Census Bureau. On the bottom, we have the hypothetical family income. They're starting out at about $18,000 a year. This is a Tennessee family of 3 earning $18,500. And what you're seeing on the vertical axis there is their disposable income, their take-home pay. Now, this family, you can see as they go from the current $18,000 a year up to, say, $80,000, is hitting a few different benefits cliffs there. We have TANF early on, Medicaid, healthcare, food assistance through SNAP, and child care. And you can see that, as you know from studying the benefits cliffs, those workers are just worse off, right? Those drops down, it means that worker took a little raise and their disposable income is lower. So the analysis you're about to see is, for every worker in Tennessee, this is just one, that black line is their current income, that vertical black line at $18,000. These dashed red lines are the hypothetical earnings boosts, right? So again, excuse me really quick, we're going to basically say, I'm going to give you a raise and see what your public assistance is here. I'm going to give you another raise, see what your public assistance is here. And you can see right here, with a $10,000 raise, is this worker better off? Absolutely not. So for this particular worker, the $10,000 raise might not make a lot of sense. Right? And I'm going to come to that at the end when we talk about coaching. So what are the results? This is the results we have. We see on the bottom the effective tax rate from actually a negative rate. Some workers are better off going into the workforce. They actually get more than the income gain. All the way to the true benefits cliff. 100% or more means that you're actually worse off from advancing. The colors of the bar represent the 2, the 5, and the $10,000 boost. The number of Tennessee families is on the vertical axis. One way I'll ask you that might help you interpret this chart. This blue line here is the top marginal income tax rate for high-income workers in the U.S., 37%. So what this chart's telling you is that everyone to the right of that blue line pays more than the top marginal income tax rate of 37%, right? And you have a number of workers here paying more than 100% of their earnings back. Okay. Now, I think what's even perhaps very relevant for this group is when we break this down by workers with families without children and then families with children, you see there's a significant difference, right? The orange bars are families without children. Most of those families are paying between 10 and 19% effective tax rates. With families with children, the blue bars, you can see it actually starts to move out here to the right. Most families are in that bucket there of 30 to 39%, but we actually find about 15% of families with children are paying more than a 50% tax rate. Right, so again, what does that mean? We're giving these families $1,000, they're only keeping 500 of it. Right, and that's happening to 15% of families with children in our analysis. Right, and over here, you can see it's about 10% of these families with children are actually worse off from advancing. Right? So that's a quantification of the benefits cliff issue here in Tennessee. About 10% of families with children are worse off, and we see about 15% are paying more than half of their raise is being taxed away through the public assistance losses. Well, the next question you might ask is, because you're probably thinking about solutions hats coming on, what can we do about it, right? Well, the first thing we can do is break it down by, well, what programs are causing these effective tax rates? This chart's showing you the primary drivers, again, for families with children and without children. Orange bar, families without children. Green bar, families with children. That total there is the total effective tax rate for Tennessee. Just give it a concrete. This is about, on average, 53% for all families in Tennessee with children. You can see immediately, is there a pointer here? Let me see. Yes. The biggest drivers of the cliffs in Tennessee are going to be food assistance through SNAP, health care with Medicaid and the children's health insurance, and then just taxes, payroll taxes, right? So right away, if you're thinking about what are the programs that, potentially causing this, food assistance, Medicaid CHIP, and then of course just taxes, right? Notice that CCDF here is child care subsidies. We hear a lot about that. That's not a big contributor. But the reason why that's not a big contributor is just there's relatively fewer people on it, right? That does not mean it's not significant, okay? The results I just showed you align very well with some current evidence that just came out of the state of Utah, one of the, as you probably know, leaders of the one-door model of workforce development we heard about earlier. So they asked people on public assistance, what are you most concerned about using? Medicaid was number one, food assistance was number two. Right, so what we just saw in Tennessee aligns almost exactly with what we saw in Utah. Final takeaway of this I want you to just realize here is if you look at total taxes here for the families without children, this encompasses about the entirety of their total marginal tax rate. So for families without children, it's really just income and payroll tax that's being taxed away. Families without children, look at all the add-on from the public assistance loss. So all this is this part of their effective tax rates due to things besides taxes, income tax and payroll tax. So public assistance is playing a big role for workers with families, right? So again, let me just offer the takeaways from this, right? SNAP and Medicaid CHIP are the biggest drivers we're finding of the effective tax rate in Tennessee. And it's really causing high penalties to advancement, primarily for families with children. Okay, so conclusion. Tennessee families are facing a range of these EMTRs. The average we find for families with children is 53%. So on average, you give a worker with children in Tennessee $1,000, on average, they're losing more than half of it. Okay, this is actually close to the national figure of 51%. That's in one of those reports I showed you. About 10% of families with children face a benefits cliff. In fact, they're worse off from advancing. About 10%. Now let me offer concluding thoughts about, well, what's some actionable work that's perhaps complementary or in addition to what you're already doing. Now, there's two general approaches to help workers with this challenge. Number one is coaching and workforce-based strategies, and that's what this board's already undertaking, right? Number two is policy and programmatic changes that might kind of smooth out these cliffs in the first place, right? So you can either coach or you can kind of fundamentally change the structure of the program. Now, for the coaching issue, I want everyone to sort of appreciate there's really two scenarios here. And again, for some reason, the translation didn't quite fit or make it to this version of the deck. What are the kind of two common situations a worker that's, let's say, comes into an American Job Center might face? Number one, these cliffs are so significant that it would take them years to overcome them. They would have to go back to school, get more credentials, or be in the workforce for like, say, 5, 10 years to overcome a loss of childcare. That's a qualitatively different scenario than part 2 here, where let's say the cliffs are relatively minor and some budgeting strategies and some career advancement will overcome them relatively quickly. So when you're thinking about coaching strategies, I want us to try to bucket those 2 different scenarios. Some workers might face incredibly challenging advancement prospects, right? If they're going to lose a lot and it's going to take them 10 years to recover, it's going to be a difficult coaching conversation. If the cliffs are more minor, right, and another short-term credential, some standard advancement within the firm or the company can overcome them, the coaching conversation is going to be qualitatively different. Right? So again, if we go back to our family, I'm going to show you what I mean by how these scenarios can be different. This is the same family in Tennessee. This is a real family in Tennessee. These are their benefits cliffs. Let's say they walk into an American Job Center. They go to Tennessee's in-demand jobs data. They learn about the medical assistant, $31,720 per year salary, okay? Well, where does that put the family? Is that a good spot relative to this black line? They're worse off. So from a coaching perspective, medical assistant might not make a lot of sense for this worker. But if you go to physical therapy assistant, which I think is a 1-year credential, suddenly they're looking much better. Right, so again, like a lot of this coaching is idiosyncratic to the situation the worker's in. Medical assistant might not make sense, but a longer-term credential like a physical therapy assistant, suddenly this is looking really good. Right? A totally different worker, this is a different worker, a real worker in Tennessee. This one happens to be unemployed, so they're kind of sitting right here at 0 income. Some smaller cliffs. If we move this worker into that same medical assistant salary, again, about $31,000 a year, they're much better off than they were at unemployment. But you see how this is a different worker, and it just looks much different, their prospects. So that's why, coaching, and one of the advantages, I think, of the pilots and the strategies you're undertaking, can account for these differences. I'm gonna skip this slide about coaching kind of strategies around the benefits cliffs and just get into that second bucket of strategies that you might want to consider as you think about this issue, and that's policy mitigation. So I just want to leave you with a couple examples of work I've seen of states and think tanks that have offered solutions. This is an example from the state of Florida. They have a program called School Readiness Plus, and they wanted to get rid of the benefits cliff in childcare, the childcare subsidy program. And in fact, you can see this highlighted right here. The SR Plus program helps low-income families pay for childcare while lessening the effect of the benefits cliff. So they actually smoothed out the benefits cliff in Florida to get rid of this challenge for workers that were trying to advance. Right? So this smoothing option is a proposal that other states have considered. Right? Fundamentally just eliminating the benefits cliff. Other examples, that was childcare. There's examples across a range of programs, food assistance, cash assistance. Just some readings I would recommend for you all that I've seen across a lot of, really kind of a full spectrum of ideas. The National Council on State Legislatures has the Introduction to the Benefits Cliffs and Public Assistance Programs, offers a variety of different solutions that states are undertaking. And then over here on the right, the American Enterprise Institute, actually, and this author here is from the state of Utah and is working very in-depth out there on the benefits cliff. Just published a proposal called Stranded by the Safety Net. Right, and this is another place that you can go, and of course, we at the Atlanta Fed can help you kind of look at some of these proposals from an analytical standpoint if it's of interest. But I just wanted to leave you with, with the recognition that other states are looking at the programmatic and policy ways to fix this issue. But I see that as completely complementary to the coaching workforce strategies that are fundamental to the work you do. Thank you very much, everyone.
Alex, thank you so much. What questions do you have for Alex on the presentation? Or I appreciate the specific data to Tennessee residents. I think that makes it very real for us. Yeah, Jason.
Not a question, but just, something that popped into my mind, with that model that you had, is it potentially a way for, you know, eventually in our American Job Centers, when we do have an individual that comes in there, that we could create that type of model so that they sit down with a coach, we find out all their benefits, and we say, you know, push a button that says, okay, you need to be looking at credentials that are going to lead you to this type of employment, and so that you're not going to be negatively impacted by the loss of these benefits. I think, to me, that would be something that would be very helpful for our AJCs, thank you, AJC workers to be able to provide that resources. So that would be something I would just think about. Are we thinking about that?
Thank you, Jason. Yes, we are. And the purpose of the pilot that the board adopted is to study that and get the effects of that in Tennessee, to learn and scale that across the area. I will say, just as a footnote here, this is a different type of training model than what the system has been used to. So some of the things that we're doing is looking internally about what now becomes the frontline worker in an American Job Center today versus what it was a few years ago. And so some of this is training, some of this is creating a whole new class on our side to be able to have people that understand these tools and can apply applicability, not to tell somebody you need to be a physical therapy assistant, but to give them the information to help co-design a pathway for them. And so we'll be learning from this model over the next couple of months and providing those outcomes to the board, but also using this internally, because I think this is going to have some implications for us on the level of staff and type of staff we recruit into American Job Centers.
Good, thank you. Yeah, David.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex, for this presentation and for this to be on the agenda. I know we had this back in August, and this has been a conversation going on. This is really important. I'm in Memphis, and so we're working with families on the ground in the community. And I appreciate the two matters you raised around coaching. It is important, and inherently, it has limitations, and so it does not provide full opportunity for individuals and families by virtue of the cliffs. So there's some courses, pathways, they're just not available by virtue of even the data you showed. And so I raise that up in terms of the inherent issues. And so it's good to have awareness, but there's also limitations inherently for families. The other is around policy, and I know there's a lot of conversation, and I know with DHS and just I raised last time we talked about this. Is there a place around policy? Is there anything kind of bubbling up? Because in my opinion, this is ultimately a policy matter. And I know we're in session now, and I don't know of anything in bill like form. So curious, is there anything bubbling in that regard around policy matters?
I mean, I'll offer on the policy side. I can't offer too much outside of for the examples from certain states I've seen, right? So the Florida example is childcare. Other states have undertaken, of course, others, right? But the first point you made, I thought was a good one, and that is, you know, for some percentage of the workers, the path forward is going to be challenging, right? And when you look at some of the guides on benefits cliff coaching, one was actually referenced in this presentation. Realism is a guiding framework. You need to be realistic about what is that path forward for you, right? And for for some percentage of workers, it may be low. It's going to be very challenging, like that first scenario we saw.
If I can just add from a policy perspective, I think to answer your question, studying this is going to be very important for us. And I think tackling it sort of one step at a time. We've seen some really broad-based policies or practice, and it's kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall. And what I gather from this board is that we want to be a little bit more scientific in our approach to learn what we're doing and determine geographically and demographically where it makes sense to launch some of this. The other thing I'll say is with the ecosystem that is around this table with human services, education, all of us together, I think there's some coalescing that we'll have to do around what are some policies that are system policies versus individual agency policies in order to move some of these things along in a more aligned fashion. So those are some of the things that we're hoping to continue to learn and glean from. I know some of the states like, Utah, which long has been sort of that leader of putting it all behind one door. But there's some complexities in Utah. Utah looks a little different than Tennessee, right, on the ground. And so how do we learn from some of these states, but the applicability maybe looks a little bit more different, infused with some of the opportunities that Tennessee now has in economic development? So I think there's ways to study this, but it's something that I've kind of been sharing, not just in our state, but really across the country. Workforce has become more scientific. It's not just about helping somebody find a job. You can do that. But the stickability of careers and jobs takes a little bit more thoughtfulness than what it did before. Because again, to your example, you bring someone in, they're not working or they're underemployed, and you go, hey, we've just made you a medical assistant, let me pat myself on the back. But you've done damage to an individual or family. So now we're moving beyond, it's not just about getting a person a job, but it's about how you get them a viable path and a continuing path, and how do you measure that? So remember, going back to our early performance metrics, we said, if we're gonna be measured by entered employment, we've done that. We got somebody to be a medical assistant. So technically, check the box. But look at what we've done now to the progression of the individual and the family, which is why I think these alternative set of KPIs that the board is required of us, I think now it can't just be, did we get someone a job? It has to be measuring them beyond that and looking at this up front. And so those are some of the things I think we need to consider as we move forward.
Commissioner, I'm curious, considering the new DOL guidelines that have come down, I'm struck by the fact that 2 of the 5 are relative to this topic, or relevant rather, in terms of, worker mobility and innovation. Is there any, at least recognition at the federal level, that rather than all 50 states trying to figure this out, that any support or discussion around addressing this at a higher level?
So there's certainly been some discussions. I would say I have not seen anything that has really given states sort of a ready toolbox, if you would, that we can draw from. And I think part of that speaks to what I said before, is the uniqueness of the state. Some states simply are not experiencing the economic development success that Tennessee has, so it may be a little bit more challenging. Going back to Deputy Governor, 100% of our projects are high-quality wages. It creates more viability for us to do something in Tennessee. And so at the risk of sounding sort of overly confident, which I'm not, because I think this is something that's very important, but it's also very nuanced, I think if we could advance the economic development success that we've had and be able to show in Tennessee how we've made that relevant for every worker, maybe Tennessee is the model that's waiting to be created. And I think there's an opportunity for us to do that. And I know at the federal level, there's some interest in kind of following Tennessee along this path. And I'm thankful we have the Federal Reserve Bank coming alongside of us, because there's no way we could do it without you. So you're kind of stuck now with us. To be able to carefully do this in incremental steps, evaluate it, report it. But I will say, it's making me think, and I'll look to Amy about, I think we need to be more public with what the board has adopted in some of this work, so that we can help some of our colleagues across the country start to follow this. The fact that we have Tennessee-specific data, Alex, I think to me is a home run. And I really think that's something we probably need to elevate.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes,
Hello.
please.
Thank you for that presentation. One point, I don't know if it's more of a comment or a question. I'm really pleased to see that we're doing this research, and I think that the career coaching is imperative to the individual family. Where I'm going to be curious is, we'll use the example of medical assistant. If that is one that's within an air quote danger zone of a benefits cliff, how is that going to affect the job vacancies in that field as we're coaching people away from those roles and into things that are more economically viable for the individual, but maybe not the industry or workforce as a whole?
I can offer a comment on that too.
Please.
First, is, so one thing I just want to emphasize is that we need to keep in mind that variation across different workers, right? The number of workers that were in that situation with the medical assistant that were actually worse off, whoever, was relatively low. It was 10% of families with children, right? So those workers exist. The majority of the workers, even with losing benefits, we're paying a lower penalty, right? So I think it's not like it's going to be bad for everyone. It's going to in fact be actually a good stepping stone for a lot of people, even on public assistance, right? And I think the advantage of coaching is just being able to one-on-one distinguish who is this right for, who might need an additional credential or a more expedited career path to be successful.
If I could just follow up, thank you, Alex. I think for us, and Natalie, to your point, I think going back to what I mentioned about being a more scientific approach is this is not just, oh my God, we got 1,000 jobs open for a medical assistant, let's push 1,000 people in. I think it's going to require us to be very intentional about assessing each individual and gathering the information that the tools the Federal Reserve Bank has made available to us and take a very individualized approach, because we can have 2 clients in an AJC and it's a perfect fit for one and not the other. So I think in our attempt to make sure that we are ensuring viability for our industry sector, this has to be an individual approach. And again, I think the training and the policies now we'll have to implement and requirements will be very different. Thank you.
Very good. Alex, thank you so much. I
Thank you,
appreciate
everyone,
your
for
time. You
Thank
bet.
Chair.
Very good. Okay, we have some committee reports, and we have votes in 2 of them. So I'm going to start with Operations Committee that does not require a vote. So, Jason, if you wouldn't mind sharing what happened in Operations Committee this morning.
Yes, again, thank you for the opportunity. I do want to acknowledge that Chairman Price was unable to be here for the larger meeting today, so he's asked me to step in and do the report summary for him. So we had a very, I guess I would call a very vigorous conversation, discussion today in our Operations Committee. I think it was very, very, very beneficial. We learned a lot of different things. 2 things that stood out to me as Commissioner Thomas shared with us the different pillars that we're focusing on. The 2 areas that we worked on, TenWorks and the USDOL waivers and AJC redesign, were really focused heavily on Pillar 3 of the state's talent strategy and such. So I thought it was very beneficial and helpful for us as we were sticking to the strategy that we're focusing on. We first heard an update on TenWorks from Brooks Young, who is the Assistant Administrator here at the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. We received more information on the status of TenWorks, which is, of course, we learned today from the Deputy Governor, Tennessee's single point of contact for employee workforce solutions. It serves as a one-stop shop, streamlining how employers access workforce programs, training resources, and agency coordination across the state. To me, this was an excellent example of how 6 different agencies have been working together to create a service for employers. And just as an aside, I would encourage all of us on the board, if you have not yet, please get online, go to tenworks.com and see that resources and how beneficial and how very user-friendly it is. I think all of us, whether we are in government or whether we are in industry, can utilize that resource to be able to see how we can tell employers this great source for people to find more about the workforce programs within the state. So a couple of takeaways. There's been great employer engagement since this went into effect in November, really focusing on reducing duplication and making sure that employers understand that there is a clear entry point into Tennessee's workforce ecosystem. They focused on how they've been looking at the nuclear sector. They've been engaging with them in a lot of different areas to help them understand what resources are available for them as well. And they also shared with us the various marketing and outreach that they are doing to ensure that all employers across the state understand what this resource and how it's available for them. We appreciate that there is a focus on clarity and consistent messaging as TenWorks continues to expand employer awareness. One opportunity that we asked and we challenged Brooks to look into is to quickly identify success metrics for TenWorks so that they'll be able to then assist the committee and the full board in understanding the effectiveness of this program. So that was a challenge that we asked Brooks to look into, is to, now that it's up and running, to quickly identify those metrics so that we can understand the effectiveness of it. Additionally, we also had a presentation by Jeremy Colbert and Jonathan Hayes, both with the department here, talking about USDOL waivers and a big part of our discussion today, the AJC redesign. So Jonathan shared with us about what a waiver is under the USDOL. And again, as Commissioner Thomas has shared with us, that is an important part of our one of our pillars of strategy as well. So we're going to be learning more about those various waivers and how we will be potentially asking for that assistance from the federal government to utilize the resources the way that we feel appropriate for our system. In talking about the AJC redesign, we learned more that our current model is outdated. It's very much brick and mortar center based, and it's very much program siloed. And there hasn't really been a lot of changes that have occurred in that system for well over a decade. So we recognize that in today's dynamic labor market and employer-driven workforce, it is not able to effectively be responsive to those needs. Again, the need to modernize our vision. So it's going to incorporate a variety of different things. It's going to look at rebranding that model and also redesigning it to create an industry-driven professional workforce hub. It's going to be focusing on how do we make that model flexible and have access, whether it's in person or through a mobile device or in virtual settings. It's also focusing, again, great discussion as we learned through the Fed presentation, the individualized career coaching and making sure that we are integrating that service delivery to ensure that our workers at the career centers are providing that career coaching that's going to be effective for the patrons who come into that service. We also talked about making sure that experience redesign is both beneficial to the job seeker, that it's seamless and helps them to understand what their next steps will be, and also for the employer to make sure that we provide a single point of accountability and to have good rapid candidate matching for their needs. We also had a lot of discussion around technology and data modernization, how that will be, what that potentially will look like, to make sure that we are providing that resource is going to be beneficial. Lastly, there was mention that a request for information was put out on January 28th, and it's due on March 18th. We do encourage all of us in our various sectors to make sure that we encourage people to look at that RFI, as there may be industries that we are aware of that could potentially provide that service to the state that they're requesting. So please, if you do know individuals who may be in this marketplace, to look into the state's RFI to potentially be a vendor for this activity. Lastly, we did ask the state to develop a map and a project plan with specific target dates and success checkpoints so that we can understand, are we progressing in a timely manner, and are we hitting the checkpoints that we need to have success for this implementation of this redesign. So that's an ask from the staff, to the staff. Anybody else on the committee like to add anything to that I may have missed? Natalie or Ron? All right, if not, that's my brief. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Jason. Any questions for Jason or the Operations Committee? All right, let's move on to the Innovation Committee. And Linda, I think you're presenting today.
Good afternoon. Thank you. So today's committee meeting covered a lot of great information, including the committee's strategic priorities, waivers on federal requirements, AI and K-12 education, and our committee awards. The committee's strategic priorities are assessing benefits CLIP pilot and overseeing statewide implementation by summer of 2026, review the UTCIS board certification and assessment to make recommendations for updates by September of 2026, oversee a framework for the Tennessee Talent Exchange micro-credentialing program by August of 2026, assess data gaps in assessing the impact of AI in Tennessee's workforce and requesting studies as needed, and supporting the development of a nuclear sector and the emerging industries. Our next presenter was Brianna Thomas, Chief Strategy Officer, who provided an overview of the waiver request for federal rules and policies. The state will be assessing which current initiatives can be improved through specific waivers. These requests will include justifications for how the waivers will provide operations and outcomes for Tennesseans. A public review open comment period will begin in April, and subsequent waiver approvals will be shared as they are needed. Assistant Commissioner Deborah Knoll presented about the Tennessee Department of Education's approach to AI in K-12 schools. The Department of Education recognizes the potential and the risk of AI. As such, the department is establishing guardrails to ensure student safety while also building competency. To do so, the department provided data-driven policies, educational training, new courses, and effective resources that will make students more AI literate. Our last presentation came to us from Amy Mayberry, Executive Director of the State Workforce Development Board. This year, the board will be awarding those in the most promising practices for workforce development. The Innovation Committee's rewards will be Workforce Partner of the Year, Rural Workforce Impact Award, Launchpad Award, and System Innovation Award. With that being said, I would like to recommend the board establish the State Workforce Development Board of Excellence and Innovation Awards and adopt the awards framework.
Okay, so we'll need to take a vote on her request to our board about establishing those awards. What questions do you have for Linda before we do that? What questions do you have for her about the awards program or any of the other presentations their Innovation Committee saw?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, we need to establish a point of order. We have had some members leave, and we need to establish whether or not we still have a quorum for a vote.
Fair.
Ms. Bradley, if you would recall the roll.
Jackie Akbari,
Present.
Natalie Alvarez,
Present.
Martha Axford,
Present.
Brandy Lassiter for State Senator Paul Bailey, Commissioner Thomas, proxy for Assistant Commissioner Jay Baker,
Present.
Martha Axford, proxy for Joe Baker,
Present.
Jason Bates,
Present.
Tim Berry,
Present.
Linda Botch,
Present.
Josh Brown, State Representative Clark Boyd, Suzanne Carr for Commissioner Carter, Natalie Alvarez, proxy for Billy Dykes,
Present.
Jason Bates, proxy for Ben Ferguson,
Present.
Max Goldberg, Marshall Graves,
Present.
Linda Botch, proxy for J. Paul Jackson,
Present.
David Jordan,
Present.
Mayor Tim Kelly, Policy Director and Governor's Designee Michael Hendricks, Sandra Long, Director Jenny McCabe for Commissioner McWhorter,
Present.
Kelly North,
Present.
Mayor Mike Pogriba, Jason Bates, proxy for Stuart Price,
Present.
Assistant Commissioner Deborah Knoll for Commissioner Reynolds,
Present.
Lee Sloan,
Present.
Linda Botch, proxy for David Stansel,
Present.
Commissioner Denise Thomas,
Present.
Will Trum, Jeff Vance,
Present. Proxy for Jeff Vance.
Ron Wade,
Present.
Vocational Rehabilitation Proxy Amy Howell.
Present.
we still have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, any questions then for the establishment of the awards or what that would take? Jenny?
I think this is a great thing for the State Workforce Board to establish. A recognition program would be great engagement with employers to help them to get bought in to everything. I would be curious what the referral process would be for identifying these, stars out across the state and workforce.
This is a great question, and I think Amy had outlined like a nomination process and the different awards. And Amy, would you like to speak on this?
I can, thank you. I presented a framework to the Innovation Committee that walked them through what this could look like. There are awards for each committee to make decision upon. It's an annual cycle that would begin in March, and nominations would go through our local boards through a standardized form. It would come through local boards. We would go through kind of a tier one assessment of data and documentation that the board has presented to support their nomination. Then we have a standardized rubric that we would apply to score nominations, and the third tier would bring the scored nominations to each committee and allow them to have ownership over the deciding of the awards. Each committee has awards assigned to them that align directly to their committee responsibilities and their strategic priorities. So it's really an opportunity for each committee to be the architect of what innovation looks like in their area, to really define it, find it, right, and elevate it, and then reward that innovation and really focus on impact. It's not just compliance, if you will. So the Innovation Committee was very excited about this. It is an opportunity for the board to continue pushing innovation and recognizing excellence across Tennessee, and it's opportunity for our partners, for our system stakeholders, AJCs, staff, all host of partners within our system would be eligible to be nominated for these awards.
So would employers be eligible too?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Good question. Any others? Jackie?
Yes, Chair, I will have to exit for another commitment, but I understand that we will still have a quorum in consideration of my exit.
Thank you. All right, do I hear a motion to allow for the awards as presented by the Innovation Committee? Thank you, Martha.
Second.
Second. Thank you, Ron. Any further discussion? All right, so all in favor of approving the initiative as presented by Innovation Committee, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you for that recommendation. It is approved, and I do agree that it will help encourage employers and create engagement for the folks who are doing the good work out there. So thank you for that. Okay, lastly, we need to hear from the Oversight Committee, and we do have another vote for that one. So Martha, if you would share what happened in Oversight Committee today.
I will be happy to do that. We had a presentation, I'm going to start with this while we have a quorum. We had a presentation by Melissa Owens today, General Counsel, and the department received an anonymous email on February the 18th, 2026 that contained numerous allegations regarding fiscal mismanagement, ethical breaches, WIOA noncompliance, and other issues in Greater Memphis. In response, the department sent a team to Greater Memphis this week to initiate an investigation regarding these allegations. While the investigation is in its early stages, the team has identified some preliminary areas of concern, identified additional resources needed to complete a thorough analysis. In an effort to gain full transparency of the situation in Greater Memphis, the Oversight Committee is requesting that the board hire a third-party forensic accounting firm to assist the department in the investigation of reviewing and reporting on the financial reports of Greater Memphis. Our committee is voted on a motion that we're bringing before this full board that the board approves the use of a forensic accounting firm and grant the department the authority to take the appropriate actions. Chairman, we are bringing that to the floor.
Okay, so with that recommendation from oversight, do I hear a motion to, well, first of all, any questions before we ask for a motion?
Is appropriate action hiring? Is that what we mean by appropriate action, or do we mean appropriate action response to recommendations?
I think the appropriate action is to hire the forensic analysis.
Thank you.
Okay. So do I hear a motion for that recommendation to pursue that investigation with forensic analysis?
So moved.
Thank you, Marshall. Second?
Second.
Jason? Okay, any further discussion? We will need to do a roll call vote for this, and I remind anyone who's involved in the Greater Memphis area to recuse themselves. Sir?
Chairman, since this was not an actual item on the agenda before today, could we also open it for
Yeah,
public comment?
certainly. Yeah, is there any public comment in the gallery? Hearing none? Yeah, hearing none. Let's proceed with the roll call vote to approve that motion.
Jackie Akbari, absent. Natalie Alvarez,
Aye.
Martha Axford,
Aye.
Brandy Lassiter for State Senator Paul Bailey, absent. Commissioner Thomas, proxy for Assistant Commissioner Jay Baker.
Abstain.
Martha Axford, proxy for Joe Baker.
Yes.
Jason Bates,
Aye.
Tim Berry,
Aye.
Linda Botch,
Aye.
Josh Brown, absent. State Representative Clark Boyd, absent. Suzanne Carr for Commissioner Carter, absent. Natalie Alvarez, proxy for Billy Dykes.
Aye.
Jason Bates, proxy for Ben Ferguson, Southwest.
I guess I have a question on this, a point of order. So as a proxy for Ben, and I'm also going to be a proxy for Stewart later on, not knowing their opinion on this, should I just abstain from that, I would assume, or is that, what would be the appropriate action in this?
I would recommend, if you're unsure if a conflict exists, to go ahead and abstain in that case.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a conflict, but just whether or not they would agree to it, so I guess I'll just abstain for Ben.
Max Goldberg, absent. Marshall Graves,
Aye.
Linda Botch, proxy for J. Paul Jackson.
Abstain.
David Jordan,
Present, but being from Greater Memphis, recuse.
Mayor Tim Kelly, absent. Michael Hendricks, absent. Sandra Long, absent. Director Jenny McCabe for Commissioner McWhorter.
Aye.
Kelly North,
Aye.
Mayor Mike Pogriba, absent. Jason Bates, proxy for Stuart Price.
Abstain.
Assistant Commissioner Deborah Knoll for Commissioner Reynolds.
Abstain.
Lee Sloan,
Aye.
Linda Botch, proxy for David Stansel.
Abstain.
Commissioner Denise Thomas.
Abstain.
Will Trum, absent. Jeff Vance,
Abstain.
Ron Wade,
Abstain.
DHS Vocational Rehabilitation Proxy, Amy Howell.
Aye. Chairman Barry, the motion does carry with 12 ayes.
Thank you. And, keep us posted on next steps with that investigation. Thank you. Martha, what else do you need to cover from your committee meeting?
Brian made his financial report. The fiscal review for the budget, the department has $180 million in authorized funding in fiscal year 2026 across workforce services, adult education, vocational rehab. This reflects an approximately $12 million increase over fiscal year 2025. And this was driven by an increased state appropriation aligned with agency priorities, successful competitive federal grant awards. Expenditure trends across all core partners remain strong and consistent with the prior fiscal year. Incumbent worker training for the department was awarded $2 million to the 9 local workforce development boards to support incumbent worker training by upskilling full-time employees and addressing documented skills gaps. A performance update, Tennessee is currently meeting all federally negotiated performance measures for WIOA Title I, Youth, Adult, and Dislocated Workers, Title III, Wagner-Pfizer. The only measure not yet met is measurable skills gained for youth, and the state is at 0.3% below the target. Technical assistance may be coordinated with local boards to close the gap. Total enrollments remain steady, approximately 65,000 participants in quarter 2, comparable to 66,000 the prior quarter. State Workforce Development Board budget. Fiscal year 2025, the department received $4 million from the General Assembly to expand the board's strategic role. As articulated in the Governor's State of the State address, these funds support workforce strategy, identification of high-demand industries, awarding grants to grow Tennessee's skilled workforce. And that concluded Brian's report. And we're going to move on to how fortunate we were to have Brianna with us. And Brianna talked about the WIO state plan modifications. There are 5 strategic pillars of Americans' talent strategy as the North Star for all workforce development activities. Modified plan content focus areas include, but are not limited to, economic changes, examples, department response to Hurricane Helene, improved rapid response model. System and governance changes, an example would be the Executive Order 109, AJC redesigned, State Workforce Development Board and local board certification in partnership with UTCIS. Policy and strategy changes, examples would be Tennessee Works. Funding and program changes, examples, increased state investments with youth, Tennessee Works, micro-credentialing, and reentry. The timeline for this is currently waivers are in development and WIO state plan modifications underway, and that's going to be complete for public comment in March and April of 2026. By mid-April 2026, waivers submitted to the ETA regional office. April 30th, WIO state plan modifications submitted to the WIO portal. The next steps to complete partner program updates, make plan availability for public comment, and submit modifications timely. In response, the Department of Labor has developed the following budget categories to develop these forwarding funds. $500,000 for the System Innovation for Planning Workforce Strategies, $1.5 million for studies and evaluations to identify high-demand industries, and $2 million for priority impact projects that grow Tennessee's skilled workforce. Examples of how the state workforce budget is already benefiting from these funds. We have hired 2 full-time staff Amy as Executive Director, and our ever-handy Isler Brady, Executive Admin. We have the state membership to National Association for Workforce Boards, and Amy's active in this membership monthly and attends on an annual national forum. UTCI's interagency agreement for the local board certification and assessment projects. Remaining funds are being carried over and will be utilized with the designated funding categories to support the strategic priorities of each community. And then, last but not least, we have Brooks Young, Julie Roberts, with the Pell Workforce presentation. Brooks and Julie provided an overview on federal expansion of the Pell Grants to short-term workforce programs. This creates a new pathway for Tennesseans to access high-quality, job-aligned credentials without incurring debt, and positions Tennessee to strengthen our talent pipeline in the high-demand industry. Tennessee Framework under development through Joint Department of Labor and THEC work group ensuring alignment across the system. Focus areas are going to be eligibility standards aligned in demand, high-wage, high-skill occupations, structured approval and accountability process, ongoing outcome monitoring. Draft policies expected for public comment in April. The policy focuses specifically on credentials tied to in-demand, high-skill, high-wage occupations. Tennessee is intentionally defining these terms based on our labor market needs, not just federal minimums. To ensure workforce Pell investments directly support employer demand and economic growth priorities, board approval anticipated at our May meeting. Targeted implementation is July 2026. Oversight Committee will monitor policy and integrity and system impact. Operations Committee will lead operational implementation. And this concludes my report, Chairman.
Thank you. I know everyone is anxious to get out. I am so grateful for your extra time and staying over. It means so much. We did get a lot accomplished, and our next meeting is May 8th, and hopefully it will be less verbose. Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Any?
Second.
Second, no opposition, and very good. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.